Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott back on the show. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? So, Cameron's going to have a flurry of things to discuss today, including Guilty Gear Strive, the NoPixel server for Grand Theft Auto 5 roleplay, Mass Effect 2, and Godfall. And we talked about it last week, or I said I was going to talk about it last week, but then we ended up having to cut it for time because Frank had to go somewhere else. But I will discuss my thoughts of Ratchet Clank Rift Apart this week, spoiler-free and all that stuff. So that's what we're going to be discussing on today's episode. But before we dive into any of that, remember, here's some housekeeping for you. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast everywhere you can, all that fun stuff. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like our wonderful Patreon producers do. Cameron, I will throw it to you, kick it off, because you have a ton of different things you wanted to discuss. So hit me with whatever you want to bring up first.
So first we got to talk about Guilty Gear Strive.
Okay.
Latest iteration of the acclaimed used to be like a cult classic series, but since Guilty Gear Xrd came out about 5 years ago, it just broke itself into the because the fighting game community was at that point mainstream. When this game came into the fighting game community, the FGC, it in itself became kind of more of a mainstream game that a lot of people got more interested in.
Mm-hmm. I do remember hearing Xrd and seeing it places and being like, I don't know how you're supposed to say that one.
Yeah, it's Guilty Gear is a fun series that is very wacky and wily. It's like if you took it, but at the same time, it has potentially the deepest and densest plot of any fighting game that's ever existed.
Of course it does.
Yeah, it's also happens to be my favorite fighting game series of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it tracks, right?
Well, I've seen you tweeting some stuff. I saw the Maximilian dude tweet about I think maybe you retweeted or I saw other people retweeting it too. But his whole clip out of talking about casual gamers and why they're important to games like Guilty Gear Strive. And I saw your response to that of you play that game for the story, and you are a huge fan of the Guilty Gear story. Save apparently the final chapter on this one.
Yeah. Man, when I buckled down Friday night about 2 weeks ago, I was stoked. I'm I can't wait. And I have to say, throughout all but the last half hour of the story mode, because what changed going into Xrd so the Guilty Gear series goes like this. It goes Guilty Gear X, Guilty Gear XX, Guilty Gear Xrd, Xrd Revelator, and now Strive.
I'm not going to ask any follow-up because I don't want to know, and I don't want you to dive into why.
There's no. It is entirely just a play off of the fact that, they used X twice in the second one, and so as a joke for the not joke but plays into the idea of Xrd. They also have there's the iterations on Guilty Gear XX or that is really wild stuff #reloaded.
I mean, I specifically said I didn't want to ask about it, and yet you go down into the well anyway.
Oh no, I could go far deeper. I'm keeping it surface level for you.
Yeah. It's Tokyo Mirage Sessions #FE and all that. Japan names games weird, and I've given up on it. We both played enough Kingdom Hearts to know that fucking naming conventions are just nonsense.
Well, it's I don't like the idea of just blowing off as nonsense, but the idea of Japanese wordplay is they get into these sorts of things that they play with words in a wordplay because of the way that their language is set up in a completely different way than the way we do in the West with our Latin-based language systems. So it's just tit for tat in that regard. But I have to say that so Strive came out I watched the story mode because after in Exerd they started doing where the story mode was essentially like a 5.5 to 6 hour just like cutscene. Like you just saw a 5.5, 6 hour long movie. Of like this is the story of what happens in this game's iteration.
Like all in one, or like is that broken up over the course of like, oh, you do fights in a campaign mode and you see bits?
Nope.
Okay, that's weird.
It is super weird, and I'm not the biggest fan of it, especially because Double X had the only story mode that I can think of that was more intense as far as like branching paths based upon like there in Double X there are literally endings that you can only get if you use a extremely difficult specific move called an instant kill. That's extremely high risk, high reward. And do it in a way that is like very specific, and you can get a secret ending for one of the characters that way. Another character, you have to defeat a character, defeat a character in their story mode using a specific combo to end the fight with. And it's this entire thing with that like Double X had this very intricate, deep story mode that was never that in Exerd they just said, hey, we just want to really tell this story, and they do, and it's good. Like it's solid. I love it. But like the thing about Arc System Works is that they just make really great fighting games. Whether it's Guilty Gear, Blaze Blue, they did the Persona 4 Arena games that were just spectacular. They have done Cross Battle, the tag team Cross Battle game that came out a couple years ago with like Rooster Teeth characters and like a bunch of different cross stuff from a couple of different niche series. And like they're just fun. They are a fun and cool company. And Strive came out, and the last chapter. So I first discovered the Guilty Gear series when I was like 15 or 16 years old. Because I looked at Guilty Gear Double X and I said, if this fighting game series has 20 iterations, it must be good. Because I thought the Double X numeral was 20. And I was like, sure, let's check it out. And then I was like, I fell head over heels in love with this series between its style and so the nomenclature of and like the aesthetic style of Guilty Gear is based off of rock and metal music. Soul Bad Guy, the main character, is a play off of like the name Bad Guy comes from Call Me Mr. Bad Guy, the Freddie Mercury solo album. And it gets down to the point where the way Soul Bad Guy holds his sword in his hand and like swings it around is the same way that Freddie Mercury used his mic and mic stand to fight the Highlander in the Princes of the Universe music video. Like it gets that deep into things on stuff, and like weird and intricate and cool, and there's crazy characters. There's an interdimensionally traveling surgeon named Faust. There is like a teenage girl sky pirate named May who swings around a giant anchor. And then you have like a character like that's like Kai Kisk, who literally like he's a lightning dude with a sword who happens to also be a cop. And for like the beginning games, now in the game series he's a king. Big transition there, but I digress. Yeah, it's a wacky. It's kind of like, you remember Wacky Racers?
No.
Like the you never saw Wacky Racers, the old Hanna-Barbera cartoon?
Nope.
Never mind that. I was going to make a comparison using that, where it's like Wacky Racers meets like metal and rock music and anime and fighting games, and it's the coolest thing. Daisuke Ishiwatari, who is the creator, he's interesting because he actually spent his childhood and teenage years in South Africa, and so he was deeply exposed. And this is in like the late 80s, early 90s. So he was deeply exposed to Western culture, like just living in it. And from that, going back to Japan, he's just the coolest dude. But the problem I have in the last chapter is that like 16 years ago, I was given a setup that I've been waiting to get paid off to, and the way that they pay it off in the last chapter is like just beyond disappointing. And it is what it is, and I tweeted out about it, and I've moved on since then. What I want to talk about...
Is it disappointing because it was 15 years of build-up and you thought it was going to go one direction and it didn't go that direction? Or is it because it was 15 years of build-up and it just wasn't a satisfying payoff for 15 years?
The only way I can describe it is that, like, there isn't even enough substance to it for me to be like, it didn't go like the way I thought it would, or it even like, oh, it just didn't pay off. It just wasn't done in a way that paid it off. They handle the setup for that.
I guess, was it supposed to be something that was paid off, or is this something that like you've built up in your head that was supposed to have this epic payoff thing?
No. They've been hyping this thing up, like this confrontation between these two individuals, for many years in many games, and for it to be paid off in such a I'll just call it out, like, in such a bullshit way, is just so dumb and stupid, and it's really disappointing to see it happen the way that it did. But at the same time, I also look at it and I think to myself that it's very clear that they don't want to, that they are no longer concerned with telling that story. And so it's it's a decision done in a way to resolve something and just be done with it, rather than resolving it in a way that is meaningful and has actual payoff. So that is just like, it's still super disheartening, but at the time I was just kind of like really just heartbroken about it, because like we talked about in Return of the Jedi, like the karmic Houdini moment that people give Darth Vader for his redemption. Mm-hmm. This very much happens to an even greater degree with a character in this series, and the animosity and like difficult relationship that person has with one of the other characters, and actually with a lot of the characters, but mainly with this one character, like a lot of just the fact that it was resolved in a way makes it worse than if it had just never been touched on at all, which is disappointing. But that being said, it's the best fighting game that's ever been made. It is awesome. The gameplay is super tight. They've reworked things so that there's less spammy moves. Characters that had kind of like lower level versions and iterations of the same kind of like power move set, combo set, have been totally changed over to give them new moves. It works totally different in a lot of different ways. They've refined and really just mastered like the way that you can basically walk into this game and just be somebody who just mashes buttons. And over time, you will naturally gain the knowledge and ability to play at a higher level. And like, because I've watched people who stream it, like I've been watching people play it, and to see people just natively like just start figuring things out, and for things just to start clicking for them, they get into like upper, like higher tiered levels of combo difficulty execution. That is just like, it's awesome to see. I can't wait for I'm really excited for fighting game tournaments going forward. The first fighting game tournament, Sonic Fox of the fighting game community, who's done Dragon Ball Z Fighters, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, he actually won the first major tournament, or I think it was a minor tournament, but the first tournament made for Guilty Gear Strive. And he won it with a character that a lot of people kind of considered like B tier. It's good. The game is just solid, foundationally set up to be really, really good. And just like, it's great. I love what I'm seeing from it. I love the love that it's getting from critics and fans alike. Like, and at the end of the day, like, yeah, am I kind of bummed out? But yeah, but I also am in the minority. I play this game for the story, and it's a fighting game. Mm-hmm. Like, it is what it is. And I am just so happy that this franchise that I've loved for half my life is getting the critical acclaim that I think it's always deserved. So
cool. There's some Guilty Gear Strive thoughts. About like how long did it take you to play through that one?
The story?
Yeah. Is it just like the 6-hour video
hours.
that you're talking about?
Six-ish hours.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Then let's move over onto, this is something I know you've been trying to get a part of for a while now, but you finally got accepted into the NoPixel server.
So I'm in the NoPixel public server.
Okay.
What that means is, so there's still the private server, which is the one you have to fill out an application for.
Mm-hmm.
The public server is a server that anybody can get onto, but I do have I basically was able to get tier 1 access, which means I have like tier 1 priority. It's a reverse tier 1 to tier 5. So tier 5 is the highest priority. Tier 1 is the lowest of what is essentially like a kind of like paid priority. And then no priority is the first come first serve type of thing. And so depending on the time of day, like I can get into there pretty quickly. There's still a wait time because I'm not whitelisted, so I can't get in automatically. But it's awesome. Like being able to get in there, play like role play as kind of like a. So I'm playing I've talked about it with you.
Are you playing your character where you're basically like a televangelist on the radio?
No. So I haven't gotten to that point in my plan yet. I just started. So in order for me to do this, I have to it's a community, and being part of that community and being new to that community means I have to meet people. I have to talk to people. I can't, as just a brand new person new to the city, go to the mayor and ask for like this really big favor to help me set up this business, to like put on a radio station. Like I can't, like I don't have the the political cachet to do that. So I'm starting my empire at this point, or like I'm starting my I have my long-term goals, which is to kind of like have like a radio station or have something like that going on that I can be trying to think of like somebody who's not an absolute garbage person like Dr. Phil or Dr. Oz. Who's that one lady who's on 99.9 who gives out advice?
Oh,
Diane.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. The name is escaping me. I listen to her all like during the holidays when they play like Christmas music all the time. But yeah, it's
she has been on like a local station here in Phoenix for a lifetime.
She is very syndicated.
Yeah.
I just don't remember who. Yeah. Looking up 99.9 shows, so let me just like.
Yeah.
Come on.
99.9 is like the KTV. I think it's KTV is what it is.
KEZ is 99.9.
KEZ, that's right. KEZ.
It's not Daphne. Why is it like?
It's a D name for sure. I know.
Yeah. Because it was Beth and Bill were like the kids or the morning show.
Yeah, Beth and Bill in the morning, and then you get Beth and Bill's not on there.
No. I think he either passed away or something like a long time ago.
Yeah, so it's just been Beth in the mornings. Beth and Bill were like for years like the staple local, or not local, but like syndicated like morning.
Like they were show. Local, yeah. They were local.
Yeah, Beth and Bill. And Bill were local. Awesome.
Yeah. And then it became Beth and Friends.
Beth and Friends. That's right. Gosh, that is the station that's always on when I go into my local Circle K. So if I go in early enough, I hear her talk, and it like brings me back to like my parents dropping off at school, or like on a road trip, like mom and dad having 99.9 on.
Delilah. Hey there, Delilah. That's like that whole fucking thing. Yeah. Yes, Delilah.
Yeah. Delilah. Yeah, so Delilah, like basically doing like a Delilah kind of talk show, like radio host thing. That's kind of like the goal, the long-term goal. Right now, I'm Rev Cabot. I'm Rev. You can call me Rev. And talking with people like I'm a tow truck driver right now. I'm an independent contractor working with the city of Los Santos to tow cars that have been reported for parking violations or have to just broken down in the middle of the street. So that's what I do, and it's pretty good money. and I'm doing all right.
So, like, since I've not watched really any of the NoPixel stuff, like, is that just the like you're going through and basically doing the same like tow truck missions you would do during the main storyline?
No,
No, you
no,
like you just have a tow truck and you go pick up cars off the road.
It's an entire built-in customized system that's totally modded into the GTA 5 game, where like I go in and I they'll send me a notification saying, "Hey, we have a pickup available." I hit like the check mark, and if I'm the first person to hit that check mark, or I think there's also like a proximity priority as well. Like I'll get the notification, it'll show me on the map where it is. I pick it up, I bring it back to the tow yard, drop it off, process it, which basically means I'm impounding it, and then depending on how many people are doing it at the time and how many cars are getting reported, I can make anywhere from $400 to $900 per tow. And yeah.
And so,
if you
is there another character, another person in the game there, just like waiting with the car? Like, is that a real player, or is it just?
It can be. So if somebody called me and said, "Hey, I know you have a tow truck, Rev. Can you come help me out by picking it?" Like, oh my, like I got hit by another car, and now like my car is like halfway in the water, or something, and I need it. Or it's like it went off the pier or something. Can you come, tow it out? Like I can do that for people for sure, but most of the time it's people who have stolen cars and then abandoned them.
Mm-hmm.
Those cars get reported either by police or by citizens who report it, and like we get the notification of where their car's at. We go and we pick it up. The worst one ever was one that was parked right in front of the apartments, and I don't mean in the parking lot. I mean in the apartment building. There is like a series of steps and everything that goes up to it, right out in front of the front doors. I damaged my truck so bad, like reversing my way up those stairs to get to an angle where I could get close enough to this car to tow it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the repairs themselves were not as expensive.
At what point would it have just made more sense to just be like, screw it, I'm abandoning this job?
So even if I abandoned the job, but I still needed to get rid of somebody needed to get rid of that car, there is a way that I can process cars on the street if I can't pick them up with my tow truck. It's called scuffed, like if it's bugged out or if it's just not working. People just say that it's scuffed. And I'll go up to it and I can do an impound there, and I'll get $50 for it, which is fine. But so when I process a car at the tow yard, it's an extra $50. Some people don't want to process their stuff; they just want to drop off the car, go, and try to get the next job.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll leave the car there. If I drop it off and I see there's a car or two or three cars in the process, like in the yard, I'll check around, make sure nobody's there to do the processing on them. Process it, extra $50 to $150 right there in my pocket.
Okay.
It's awesome. And just talking to people, getting to know people. You can tell people who have been thinking about this or have a character that they've developed versus the people who don't. Because at one point I was talking to somebody, we were doing a tow job together. And he was we were talking, I was like, yeah, I've been around mostly the southwestern United States, but I've been all around the country. I'm like, what about you? Are you local? And he goes, what? No, local is also a term for NPCs in the world. I'm like, are you local? Are you from Los Santos? And he goes, no. I was like, oh, where are you from? He goes, somewhere. I'm like, solid. That's great, man. Anyway, it's fun. It's kind of dumb, but it's fun. And I'm getting to flex role-playing muscles that I haven't been able to flex in a long time. And just, it's fun playing with people who are willing to do that. So, I've been having a great time with it, man. But I've known about great times. I need you to tell me, man, how is Ratchet and Clank?
Ratchet and Clank is a lot of fun. I had a great time with it. I basically played through it in a couple days. I was basically playing through it while E3 was happening. I'd have Kind of Funny on, on my laptop or something, or I just have random conferences going, that basically Friday after work, and then pretty much all day Saturday and maybe Sunday, I think, is when I was playing through Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Had a great time with it. It was a ton of fun, especially So I've talked about this a little before. My first real introduction into Ratchet and Clank was the 2016 reboot. Like it was a series
Same.
I had always seen, but just I never got into Ratchet and Clank or Sly Cooper or Crash Bandicoot, like a lot of, or even Jack and Daxter until like the PS3 era remasters or something like that. So like the PS2 era of platformers that were coming out, that was still, I was like just deep into Final Fantasy games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really diving into a ton of the PlayStation platformer stuff. And so it wasn't like, I remember seeing Ratchet and Clank games and seeing like the crazy weapons they had and thinking that was really cool, but I just never picked them up myself. So yeah, the 2016 one was the first one I hopped into. Loved it, had a great time with it, thought it was beautiful, and this was basically that, but you know, on steroids. Had a great time with it on in Rift Apart. I was definitely confused a little bit in some of like the characters because like this like the 2016 was much more like a reboot and a tie-in to like the movie of the time, and so like spoilers for that game, but like Captain Quark becomes like the bad guy and gets like sent off to prison and stuff like that. And so I got very confused at the beginning of this one where he's like out and he's like helping throw a parade for Ratchet and Clank and stuff, because this is supposed to be, I think, more in like the just broader general timeline of the Ratchet and Clank series.
Yeah.
Where maybe he's been reformed or stuff, like whatever. So I was just a little confused up front by that. I was like, wait, I thought, because I also only replayed, or I just replayed the 2016 Ratchet and Clank a month or two ago, back when like Kind of Funny was doing it for their PlayStation I Love You like book club game. I just sat down and like replayed the game for over the weekend or something like that. So I was like, I was very confused at the beginning of the game, like on the setup and stuff. But you very quickly go into, I mean, it's what we've seen in the trailers and stuff. You very quickly are in like, oh, you get thrown into a different dimension, and you're in a dimension where there is another Lombax, Rivet. Without getting into like spoilers, there will be another like a Clank, you know, in that dimension that kind of also gets introduced and becomes kind of a secondary character to play as. And it was just a ton of fun. It is the same gameplay of like the 2016 game, totally, you know, outlandish and crazy weapons and stuff. And the story is Ratchet and Clank kind of get pulled apart and, you know, are split up for part of the adventure, for a good chunk of the adventure, with Clank going off with Rivet, as we've kind of seen in the trailers, and then Ratchet kind of finding his new Clank kind of character for their parts. And so it is set up in a very similar manner to the last game and presumably other games, where like there's a series of planets you're going through, and you'll kind of, you know, you go to a planet, you've got your main objective, and then there's usually like a side objective with some like hidden collectibles and stuff like that you'll do. And like half the planets you're basically playing as Ratchet, and the other half you're playing as Rivet. And they like both characters play identical. Like your weapons carry over from one to the other. So if you've like unlocked a gun with Ratchet, the next time you're playing as Rivet, you will automatically have that gun. There's no like, you're not having to like build up two characters or anything like that. Same with like I call them like the Metroidvania elements. Like when you get a new thing that helps you like unlock a thing, both characters will have that automatically. So, like if anything, that's actually like my one maybe, like my quote unquote biggest criticism is that like I wish the characters played a little differently somehow, or I wish there was something that set the characters apart, because like they really don't. Like the guns, everything plays identical. It's just, oh, one of them has a wrench and the other one has a hammer or something like that, which you can play with. There's a lot of like fun Easter eggy things, and one of the things you can do if you get like you get the right gold bolt, is you can change like the look of some of these things. And so I had my Ratchet like running around with a Keyblade basically at some point.
What?
Yeah, like it's basically
That's awesome.
like, you can change the wrench into like a sword because there's like pirates and stuff, or a key, or you can change the wrench to the hammer and vice versa. And so it's just like you've got like 4 or 5 different options, and one of them was a key. And so it's like, hey, yeah, I'm totally gonna pretend I'm in Kingdom Hearts and running around with a keyblade. Had some fun with that. The weapons are a ton of fun. In particular, some of the standouts I would say are we've seen like the in the trailers or in kind of the original state of play or whatever. There was the topiary sprinkler that's basically like a freeze gun, but instead of it being like ice, it is like a sprinkler that turns them into like a hedge or something. So it keeps them locked in place, any enemy pretty much. And freeze them, and it's just a more interesting approach to that than just like your usual freeze gun or something like that. They also have a freeze gun, which it kind of like is a fun element of that as well. I also had a lot of fun with the lightning rod gun, because it's basically just like almost like a minigun, but it shoots like electric bolts, and if you hit characters enough, they'll basically be like stunned and they'll be like electrocuted a little bit. And like they made a little bit of a deal about this with the state of play, but like half the guns probably have like different firing modes with the adaptive triggers, where it's like if you hold the trigger down halfway, it'll shoot one way, and then if you hold it down like if you pull it all the way down, it'll shoot another way. Like there's basically like a shotgun type weapon that'll do that kind of thing, where it's like if you pull half trigger, it'll shoot one barrel, and if you pull down the full trigger, it'll shoot all barrels, and stuff like that. So it's like it, but it wasn't as notable as I think that like it was made out to be, especially because it's not every weapon. Some of the weapons are. There's just like the one firing type, stuff like that. The Rhino in this is a ton of fun. They showed a teaser or a trailer about it, like the week of launch, that it does the rift kind of that the Rhino pulls in does cross over into other Sony PlayStation franchises. So you can like the big one that they showed off was like, oh yeah, you can pull in like a Thunderjaw from Horizon Zero Dawn, and they basically like they pretty much all behave the same way, where it's like it brings in a big explosion, but it's just like a different animation. And so like characters from those other games, I have a ton of like screenshots that I have saved on my system that I don't want to like post because they could be spoilery and stuff like that. But like, yeah, there's a ton of fun little Easter eggy things that they put into the game, playing with the idea of like this rift, like being able to go between dimensions, and they're not all just Ratchet and Clank dimensions and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I had a great time with it. It was a little like basic to. I mean, it was pretty much, if you played the 2016, this is going to play largely the same kind of way. Like there wasn't a ton of like new ideas thrown in there outside of like these riffs, and like the riffs are all pretty much built into like wherever they are in the game. It's not like you're not on one planet and then you like go into a rift and it takes you to a different level. You still are all in that same level, and then you will have to get to your ship and go to a different planet or something like that. There's nothing like that kind of crazy going on there. But it's still fun. And if you get in like certain combat areas, it'll be like, oh, there's rifts that'll help you kind of maneuver around the map. So you can get kind of like the jump on the enemies or something like that, or if you need to get away from an enemy, you can, like pull yourself to a rift, and then you're suddenly across the map, and you can kind of turn around, and now you're behind them or something like that. So it's a fun for like suddenly changing the position of the battle or something like that. But yeah, it's not like it didn't. I think like in the original kind of like pitches and trailers that we saw of it, it felt like it was going to be more of a bigger deal, or a way to really use the power of the system to be like, okay, you're going to be on this one planet and like everything that's going on this planet, but then like behind the scenes, this other planet will be still running, and suddenly you're going to be able to like switch back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
Like I would liken it to when Halo Master Chief Collection came out. One of their like big features that they touted was like with the toggle of one button, you can switch between like the classic version of the original Halo Combat Evolved or the new remastered version. But like both of them are running the entire time. And so it was like I was expecting there to be like elements like that as opposed to the very scripted elements that this story has. Like there are a couple boss fights where it's like, oh, you're like they throw things at you, and so suddenly you went from the city planet to the dinosaur planet or something like that. But it is a scripted thing. It's not like you're not suddenly on that planet and can go do the other side missions or find the other collectibles on that planet. It's all just like that is that moment, that fight or whatever, and then once you're out of it, you're back into the planet you were on or something. So but yeah, it's a ton of fun. Performances are great kind of across the board. And like it very much it'll be interesting to see if they use like the premise of this game to set up like a spin-off series with Rivet and the Rivet the Clank side character that Rivet has in their dimension, while Ratchet and Clank kind of continue going off and doing their own adventures. It'll be like it's almost like it's setting up a Miles Morales series in the in the Ratchet and Clank universe kind of thing, where it's like, hey, yeah, maybe they'll do a smaller story focused on those characters while they sit and build like the next big Ratchet game or something like that. So yeah, ton of fun, lots of still fun humor stuff, and yeah, overall I had a great time with it. It didn't, and I mean it is also still probably one of the showcases right now for the PlayStation 5 for people who can get it. It just didn't do, like, I think it was one of those, like, maybe the hype got a little too high for it, and so it didn't really live up to that. I mean, it was still, I joked the other day that, like, I mean, playing through that game during E3 was the thing I was thinking about most during E3. Like, there weren't any crazy announcements from me during E3 that really jumped out. So like it like there was an element in my mind of like, did PlayStation win by not coming to E3 because they released this game that like the combination of that and the Final Fantasy VII remake on next gen stuff. It's like that's what I was thinking about all weekend was the games I was playing on my PlayStation. Yes, Xbox had a ton of great announcements and stuff, but they didn't have things for me to play then and there. So I was still a Sony pony for that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and Insomniac is just like the fact that they have hit this game as well as Miles Morales back at the launch of this system. Like they are proving themselves that they are like an incredible investment from Sony as a new studio for them. And then they're just setting themselves up there as like, they might not have the most like they might not have the Naughty Dog level of like acclaim behind their games, but like they're hitting consistent bangers at a much more regular pace. And also I want to shout out, a lot of people were basically praising them, and a lot of people at the studio were talking about the idea that they didn't crunch at all on that game,
which is wild.
So yeah, it's really, really cool and great for Insomniac. So like I think they definitely set themselves up as like upper echelon in the conversation. I mean, and I've arguably thought that since Sunset Overdrive, because that was really probably the first real Insomniac game I played. But like Sunset Overdrive, Ratchet and Clank, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and now this, like they've just been on an incredible run. And that's not even talking about like the other things that they're doing on a different scale. Like they had a lot of VR titles that they were working on as well, and even like that Song of the Deep Metroidvania type game that they did with like GameStop was like an interesting idea, and I thought had some cool things behind it. But yeah, they're like AAA first party things. Oh, that was another Easter egg. I like you can you can change the look of the nuts and bolts that you're collecting. And like that was one of the early Easter egg gold bolts that I unlocked was like changing what the currency is, and I changed it to the overcharge drink from Sunset Overdrive. So I was just like gobbling up cans of overcharge the entire time.
Nice.
And just being like, yeah, this is like, I love that, like, I'm seeing Sunset Overdrive things in a PlayStation game, because it gives me hope that there will be a Sunset Overdrive 2 somewhere down the line. Yeah, lots of fun there. Lots of just tons of Easter eggs, not only to Insomniac's other work, but also, again, like, there's a ton of other Sony franchises that got some love in there. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Had a great time with it. So those are my my Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart thoughts. Any questions?
No, you kind of answered all of them. I've been paying close attention to the game as far as like the reviews that have been coming out, what people have been saying. Lots of people saying this is a Game of the Year contender.
Oh yeah, certainly.
That it ranks up super high for them. I'm not surprised. Like you, I also went into 2016 Ratchet and Clank with like, this is my first time playing these games, and between that and everything else that I've seen from this game in particular, Rift Apart, I'm very excited to get my hands on it eventually. I just have way too much of a front load right now that I can have to take care of before I even think about getting to a back load of anything.
Yeah.
So, no, for real though, I also thought that the Rift mechanic was going to be far more relevant outside of set, like, specific points in a map.
Yeah.
I thought for sure they were utilizing the power of the PlayStation 5 to have at least have the processes of these planets going, that then you could, like, bring it in at some point using the Rift. At least with that aspect of it. So, like you, I'm similarly disappointed with that aspect of it being a bit shallow, but I'm very excited to get into it eventually and enjoying my time with it. So.
Mm-hmm. It also, I didn't really touch on this, but it does have some really cool, like, big set piece moments that, like, even those are, like, a lot of it is, like, on rails in one case in particular, like, very literally it's an on rails kind of, like, sequence and stuff.
Yeah, I saw
but
that.
it's really cool, really big, really, like, just, like, it is a showcase for the hardware still, even though it is, a much more scripted experience than I was anticipating it would be. It's still really, really cool what is going on in a lot of those sequences. So, I put up. I think Tim said this in their review as well. But like, I put some of the sequences in this up there against like some of the big set piece moments in your Uncharted series and stuff like that. So there's a lot of really cool beats that are going on there, and I think that is a testament to the work that team is doing, and it's a ton of fun. Since these games have never been like cover-based shooters or whatever, it is just you're constantly switching between weapons. You're constantly like changing up the guns. You're using that topiary sprinkler to stop somebody, and then you're switching to your gun that is like an explosive or something like that, and it'll do some heavy damage to them. You're pulling out a Mr. Fun Guy that will have an extra little character shooting some extra, basically acting as like a side turret kind of thing, or. And yeah, just having a ton of fun with the guns and like leveling them all up and it plays the same way as again the 2016 version there of collecting the resources to then add ammo to this gun or unlock an extra fun guy bomb or something like that. So yeah, there's a ton of fun in there, and it's just the action is like constant and frenetic in the best possible way.
That sounds awesome, man. I'm very excited.
So, going from that sequel to you finished Mass Effect 2. So,
yes.
What are you finished it basically like right before we sat down to record. So, yep. What are your fresh thoughts on Mass Effect 2 all these years later?
What a damn perfect game.
Mm-hmm. Did everybody survive your suicide mission? Good.
Everyone survived. I did everybody's loyalty missions. I got done in enough time. I saved my entire crew.
Yep.
Just made it out. Nobody left behind. Man, when the game first came out, it was so much harder to get some of the the high level renegade paragon like options for team member conflict resolutions.
Yeah, I remember in particular playing that first time all those years ago, like Jack and Miranda in particular, like I did not settle that appropriately at the time. And so Jack did not like me, and I'm pretty sure like in my very first run, Jack died in the suicide mission because of that, because I was never able to get her. Because I didn't, since again, that was my first time ever playing those games, I was playing it more like role-player-y, and so I was not doing like everything Renegade or everything Paragon or whatever, so I didn't have enough of one or the other by the late game stuff to even have like the okay, let's talk through this through, let me try and like reset your loyalty, and let's have that conversation that you can have if you have like a high enough thing. And so I was like, I got screwed on that one. So I remember that all too well.
Yeah, no, it's such a great game. Playing through it and making sure I'm like, I know exactly who I'm picking. I still remember who to pick to make sure everybody survives. Did all of that, got through. I was really amazed this time around how many times I picked the Paragon option, because the fear used to be if you pick the Paragon option, you're going to miss out on your Renegade unlock options, right? And it was not the case this time around. I don't know if it's just because of all the extra DLC that came out post after the game's launch. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things that go into it. Just like, things were different this time around as far as just like some things I noticed that I hadn't ever noticed before. It's great. The game's great. It really is one of those games I look back and I'm like, this is a 10 out of 10 game, 5 out of 5, 5-star, whatever you want to call it. Like, it for a game that is technically quote unquote the middle game of a trilogy, but also was the first availability for Mass Effect on the PlayStation. Mm-hmm. For it to still be such an all-encompassing, awesome game, just in its own right.
Yeah.
Is just tremendous. Will say I forgot how little dialogue. Like, I remember going back in the day, like thinking, like, oh man, there's so much dialogue that happens between Shepard and these characters, and there really isn't that much.
Yeah, it's like you get a few scenes with each of them, and it's. I mean, the thing that really like fleshes it out is the loyalty missions. That adds to it. But yeah, I remember because I mean, this was the first one I played, and I continue to, and I stand by this still, even having like just recently finished the whole Legendary Collection, that Mass Effect 3 is still my favorite game, but undeniably Mass Effect 2 is like the best standalone game of the series. So if you're only going to play one, it's play Mass Effect 2. But like for me, Mass Effect 3 as the culmination of all of those stories just hits from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm excited to actually get into it because I have a very, like we talked about it weeks ago, but I have a very challenged history when it comes to Mass Effect 3. And so I'm super looking forward to getting into that and just like really just enjoying Mass Effect 3 for what it is and just having a great time. I'm looking forward to that. So
cool. And so you said you still have like some of the DLC to do on this one?
I have the last DLC mission.
Which one is that? Is that Shadow Broker?
No, I did Shadow Broker, I did Overmind. It's the go to rescue the doctor who has been studying a Reaper artifact.
Oh, it's the Arrival DLC. Got it.
Arrival, yeah.
Where you go to the Batarian space.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have to do that one because that one actually, if you do not play that, it's a weird setup for.
Yeah, that one is that one directly ties to, and like so it happens regardless if you play it or not. But if you didn't play it, you have no idea why Shepard is on the ground in 3. So yeah, that's a fun one. I remember, so like in this most recent run, I don't think I had ever played the Bring Down the Sky DLC from the first game, which is which is a, I mean it's a similar plot. Like there's a lot of like mirror elements between that and the Arrival DLC of Mass Effect 2. So I thought going into it that there was going to be like more crossover, that like some of the characters in that were going to suddenly be appearing now in the Arrival DLC, and so I was surprised when they did not. Because they're both, I mean, they both involve Batarians, and they both involve, driving giant asteroids into other things. So, it's like, oh, it's, they seem to be building, a trilogy almost of the DLC stories there even, but then I guess we don't really get a third element of that storyline in Mass Effect 3, but yeah. Still very cool. Well, have fun with that, and then enjoy hopping into to ME3. Who'd you romance this time around?
I did Tally.
Tally, nice.
It's just a solid romance. I know there are a lot of people who are like, oh, age-wise discrepancies, but like they make it very clear in Quarian culture that your age, like your actual like numeral age, doesn't make you an adult. And Tally is like an adult who had to go through a rite of like ritual of adulthood, in her pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Like, and some Quarians are in their pilgrimage for years. So like, there's a lot of because a lot of people are like, oh, she's a child. It's like, first off, Tally's not a child. Like, just because she's not quote unquote an adult, but
if anything, like the Liara romance is probably more borderline given their like their alien lifespans, because she repeatedly says like I'm barely a child in Asari, in timelines, even though she's 100 and whatever.
Yeah, the whole thing is she's like 100 and whatever. It's like, yeah, but for people who literally live thousands of years,
yeah,
she is like 6, dude.
Yeah, I think I pretty much did Liara this most recent run through, but I was definitely like in 2 I was flirting with Tally, especially because Liara obviously is not part of your crew, your main crew in 2. So I definitely had like that flirty interaction with Tally, and I was like, oh, I miss like the Tally romance, because she is just like such a fun one. But then there is that beautiful moment where in 3 where like if you haven't romanced Tally and Garrus, that they'll get together. It's a fun one. I love like walking in on them and them being like, oh, Shepard, and then like being all awkward and uncomfortable about it. Which is so much fun of that game.
Yeah, because both Quarians and Turians are like, they're not the same kind of carbon-based life forms that humans are.
Mm-hmm.
Their amino acids are different than ours, and so especially with Quarians, but there are small allergic reactions to each other's like mixing DNA.
I think it's a great payoff to the Fleet and the Flotilla.
Oh, Fleet and Flotilla, but also...
That is like a recurring thing throughout the series.
Yeah, but it's also in the second game, there's that Turian who's like in the friend zone in the Eternal Bar.
Yeah, that's because they reference, like, have you seen that holovid, Fleet and Flotilla? And
Flotilla?
It's talking about that, like, star-crossed lovers. One is a Quarian and one is a Turian, and it's very clear, like, he's trying to, like, fish for those ideas and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I love it. I love that... Problem is that like, yeah, male Shep for me romances Tally, femme Shep for me romances Garrus.
So you never get that fun little scene. There you go. That's fair.
Nope, I don't. I never get that fun little scene because listen, as much as they're cool and awesome and I love them,
you're selfish. I get it.
It's not that I'm selfish. It's that like they're obviously the best romance options. Like there's no ifs or buts about it. I'm sorry.
Sure, Cameron. Anyway.
You're gonna sit there and tell me that I'm wrong?
I mean, honestly, the Garrus romance option in particular just doesn't seem to really hit that well, or like I think Garrus works better as like a great friend than a romance, even if you're playing as femme Shep. So that's just my personal taste, but all good.
We can all agree on. Every romance option is better than Ashley Williams.
Sure. I like when I'm playing my Renegade run, I'm tempted to just do an Ashley romance just because, but just to spite you.
If you're do the Renegade run where you do the Ashley romance, but then still leave her on Vormir.
I don't think you can, because like you don't get the romance scene until after the fact. But yeah. Anyway, so then let's close out, I guess, with you've also been playing some Godfall. So tell me about that one. because that is notoriously the one I christened like Battleborn 2.0 basically, from Gearbox. And not in like gameplay or whatever, just like in reception. It was like, it seemed like another game that was kind of DOA.
For sure. I will say that Godfall, as far as like gameplay goes, is super good. Gameplay, like actual aspects of like unlocking the different armors, it like the kind of setup is a lot less of a Souls game. It feels much more like a Warframe.
So you mentioned that. I never drew a comparison to Souls games on it personally.
I've heard people. I heard people say it's like Soulsborne type combat, which I didn't feel was very accurate.
Is that just because it's got hack and slash and parry mechanics? Okay. So it's an adventure game. It's an adventure game, and people just don't realize that those existed before Dark Souls or Demon Souls.
Yeah, pretty much. It's super good as far as like the aspects of playing it, though. But God, is it boring? Like, I do not care about the story. They throw you in the story, and it's super. I was really hoping that I would be like creating my own Godfall character to play through as, but instead you play this boring. It has these two brother characters where like it's clearly trying to set up this like very much like this like there is this deep love and bitterness and problem between these two brothers, but they just throw you right into the middle of it towards the end of it, and it just isn't good. It's not well told. It's boring. It's super generic. It's just not great. That being said, I have had so much fun running around, killing things, getting experience, like not really focusing on leveling up, but also just like unlocking a few of the different armors. Like, it's been cool. Actually, that reminds me, I forgot to mention I beat the Final Fantasy Origins.
The Stranger on whatever.
Stranger by Paradise. Yeah.
I sat down with that yesterday, and played through it and got to the chaos fight and tried the chaos fight like 4 or 5 times. I was doing this all on a Let's Play, and rage quit after like the 4th or 5th attempt at chaos, where the parry wasn't doing shit, the soul shield wasn't doing shit, and he hit me, and then before I could get up, just hit me 4 or 5 times in a row. And I was like,
Jeez.
This is cheap nonsense. Fuck this noise. And I just stopped. Let's Play's never going to go live or anything like that. I just quit out and deleted the game because I was like, this is fucking terrible. So at least now I know. So what was your experience as someone who likes Souls games way more than I do?
I really loved it. I max leveled every class, and so I max leveled the 3 basic classes, and then also max leveled the upgrade classes, which is Swordsman to Warrior, Mage to Black Mage, and Lancer to Dragoon. And I beat Chaos by just spamming the shit out of magic and like the magic combos. Like waiting until he chose his elemental sword and then hitting him with the opposite elemental to just like knock him out, or like, just waste his break gauge, into the point where I broke him twice and then beat him. Absolutely, like I ran his wallet. Like,
do the companions do anything in there? Because they were worthless in like my entire run. They were doing nothing. And I admit I was playing on like easy mode or whatever, but still they did nothing. Like, except maybe occasionally they took like another enemy out or something like that. But it was like for every 9 enemies I was killing, they were maybe taking out 1.
Yes, my encounter with it was very much more of a. They kept his break gauge from getting higher up after I made a major hit, but then I got hit by something, so I had to heal. They're useful just for like, nipping at his heels. But other than that, like, not too useful. Except to use as meat shields at certain times. I definitely use them as meat shields. But yeah, no, I had a great time with it. I really think I'm surprised with the actual like conceptual depth that there could be for this game. as far as battle aspects of it go. I did not care for like the story, like whatever they were telling the story wise, so I just turned the language to Japanese. And I actually thought that the Japanese voice acting was super good. So, like, just worked super well. Enjoyed that. But, like, you know, as somebody who's a big fan of, like, Final Fantasy 1, like, somebody kind of posed this. They're like, is this like an isekai thing, but for Final Fantasy? And if it is, cool. I prefer to play, like, not a angry, douchey character, but whatever. He sounds cool in, like, he does not sound super cool in English, but I think he sounds, like, really rad in Japanese.
I mean, the fact that, like, they were named Jack, Jed, and Ash, I was like, there's no chance in hell the Warrior of Light is named Jed. So, nice try, bro.
Yeah, no, there is something about it. Like, I'm super curious to see how it goes. Really enjoyed my time with it, but as far as, like, what a full game of that would look like, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought level design for the Chaos Palace was super cool, though. So,
one of the one cool thing I will give it was I like the idea of, like, when you take out those, like, void things that are basically like the monster spawns, like almost every time you take them out, you're destroying a pillar and that's opening up a new path for you or something like that.
Yeah, I thought that was super cool.
I thought that was kind of cool. It's like, okay, so that's like, I can't progress to the next place I need to be until I've taken everybody out, and B, it's just a cool kind of like idea and conceit behind that. But yeah, I like playing through. The way I describe it was this: like, I don't like those games enough to ever want to play on anything beyond easy mode or whatever, and I didn't care about the story enough to even bother with, like, okay, well, I could go to casual mode where it's even easier, but I don't like. This isn't going to be a compelling story for me, so it's. I'm glad they gave me that trial so I could test it out and be like, nope, this confirmed what I thought, and this is not going to be a game for me. So cool.
I'm super curious to see, because the survey they ask you to fill out is a pretty good survey. I'm super curious to see what they do in the future, because it's clear that this is just the first trial on demo. We're likely going to see probably a couple more demos.
Oh, did they give you the, because I did not get the survey, so maybe they only give it to you once you've beaten Chaos?
I think so.
Okay.
I got the survey, I filled it out, I thought it, like, and I let them know, I'm like, yeah, this is what I liked about it, this is what I thought was lacking. This is still, like, you can tell it's still very early stages, as far as, like, where it's at in its production. I think is towards the later end of it, but like where it's coming out wise is still, we're far away from a release.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. Okay. So we definitely pivoted away from Godfall, but I'll just.
Yeah, because there really isn't much to say about it.
Yeah.
Godfall Godfall's like kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, super fun.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I will just double that up as the Godfall / Stranger of Paradise segment.
Sounds good.
I don't have like a ton to report, but I did hop back into Final Fantasy XIV Online this weekend for the first time, pretty much since we sat down and recorded that stuff.
I was going to ask you about it after the podcast. This works. Yeah, what's up? How'd that go?
I mean, it's fun. I'm still like super early game stuff. So I'm running around like. I think I finally got the level 10 thaumaturge missions and stuff like that, which opened up, like, finishing that was like, okay, now you can go and do other, like, classes if you want to do, including, like, oh, you can go be a miner or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna not do that. Because that was what I fell in the trap of the first time I played, was like, I basically was like, okay, well, now I can do this with everybody. So I got, like, every other class up to level 10 or higher or whatever, instead of, like, progressing through the main storyline stuff. So I'm gonna go back and kind of continue working through the main story stuff. I still am, like, I don't remember it being as convoluted navigating the menus and stuff like that. But maybe that's just me. But yeah, other than that, like, I'm having a good time with it. It was just a nice chill thing to hop back into after finishing some of the other stuff recently. So, and like, we are kind of in a period now where, now that I'm done with, like, Ratchet and Clank and Final Fantasy VII Intermission, which I could definitely talk about the Final Fantasy VII Intermission DLC, but I want to wait until like you've finished it or somebody else has finished it so I can talk about it, because they do it. I tweeted out like, is this what Kingdom Hearts fans feel like all the time? Because they have some very bonkers shit at the end, in the end credits, much like the original Final Fantasy VII Remake had. That's like, what does this mean for the wider world that's going on? But yeah, I'll wait until you've played through it to sit down and discuss that. But yeah, so like with those games out of the way, I'm like, okay, well, I could either go back and continue playing through the Mass Effect Legendary Collection again, or I'm enjoying hopping back into Final Fantasy XIV Online. So yeah, we will see kind of where that goes. And basically when the next like big thing is that's coming out, because I'm like, I don't really have any for quite a while now. I've got pretty much an open slate of, I could maybe go and find other things in the backlog or something like that, but there's not a ton out in the
what else is coming out this year?
In the AAA space that I'm really diving into. I mean, like the things that kind of like came out of E3 that I'm like most excited about later this year are going to be stuff like Forza Horizon 5, and that's not until November, and stuff like, and maybe Halo or something like that. So because we don't know a ton on the PlayStation side of things what's going to make it out. Like Kena Bridge of Spirits is another game that I'm like super excited for. I think that's in September or something like that. So it's basically like I've got a month or two here where I might pick up like the random indie game or something like that, but it's going to be a summer of hopping into stuff like Final Fantasy XIV Online and enjoying that. And I'm still like the best gauge of like there's clearly not stuff that's out there grabbing my attention is that I'm still hopping in and doing like a few matches of Fortnite every day to like go up and grind out those battle passes and stuff like that. Did the crossover with the Brandon Sanderson thing ever actually get you to hop in? I remember seeing it. I remember seeing that character pop up.
I downloaded it. Yeah. I downloaded it, but I didn't like boot it up because I was playing other things.
There you go. Yeah.
It's like I have it downloaded at this point. Like it updates. So.
But did you get the character? Because like the character's not just always for sale. So
they're not.
They're not in the. They're no longer in the shop. So, like if you did not pick them up that weekend, it's probably going to be a while before they make their way back into the rotation.
Well, there you go. I won't be back until that Kelsier comes back into the rotation.
There you go. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this week's episode of That Nerdy Site Show. I also sat down and watched Luca, but that's another one like I want to wait and talk about once more people have watched it. Probably.
Sure.
That is the newest Pixar movie. And it's like doing that and then realizing that like we can't do a That D Plus show on it for the summer. Like I'm tempted to maybe try and squeeze in like a couple random one-off That D Plus shows, like bonus episodes while we're doing our summer of Star Wars, because otherwise it's going to be quite a while before we talk about Loki or something like that. So
I mean, you could always just record them and put them in a can.
Yeah.
And wait till we're done with Star Wars.
Yeah. Or we can just have like like 2 episodes that go up in 1 week. Like we can throw one up on a weekend or something like that. But anyway, so yeah, that is going to do it. So you can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, there is. I wanted to give a massive shout out over to our YouTube page, youtube.com/thatnerdysite. If you're watching this podcast there, we are putting out a lot of other stuff. Operation Tango with Trevor and Logan is still ongoing. There's a lot of really cool stuff. If on the podcast side of things, my podcast with Christian Puente about Kingdom Hearts Union Cross and its finale is up on podcast services. Apologies, there's no video version because I'm a dummy who forgot to hit the record button.
It happens. I think.
Yep.
Like because I appreciated that you kind of like poked fun at the fact that like half the episodes of that series are Logan talking about soccer, and the very specific niche. And it's not even that. It's not that like it's a specific niche or whatever. It's just like it was the realization that like I think we only have like one video version of that podcast right now.
Granted, it's a very long.
Yeah, indeed. You and Cam Hawkins talking about Hamilton stuff, but yeah. And hey, maybe you guys can sit down and do a follow up now that In the Heights is out. And I would be curious if he has like a ranking of In the Heights songs, or if he's going to get super into that one.
I'm not prepared to go back into that arena just yet.
That's fair. That is fair. But yeah.
So check out our stuff with that. It's really cool. We're going to have some more awesome stuff coming out in the next few weeks, including like check out some of our Star Wars we got going on for the D Plus show.
Yep. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and I will pretty much echo all of that. The Logan and I sat down and recorded the next 2 episodes of Operation Tango today. One of them was, I think we were both kind of on the same page of like it was probably our favorite mission so far, and then the episode 4 that will come out probably next week or something like that is certainly the longest one that we had, and it has some good elements to it, but it was also like we were stressed out about it because of how long that one felt. So, but yeah, check that out. It's definitely a fun game. It's up there probably in my game of the year conversation right now, alongside the co-op time I spent with him on It Takes Two and stuff like that. So, as somebody who's not predominantly a co-op kind of guy, it's a surprisingly good year for co-op stuff. So, you can check out all of that over at youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Follow all of us over at thatnerdysite.com and check out thatnerdysite.com for all of the latest content from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, and maybe even consider supporting us over on Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this show. The early access episode this month is me and Cameron sitting down for kind of my first reintroduction hour of Final Fantasy XIV Online. I got to figure out what we're going to do for next week's show, because we got to sit down here and record another early access bonus episode pretty soon for the end of June here. But yeah, if you don't support us on Patreon, those episodes go up the end of the following month every month. So there's nothing completely locked behind the Patreon wall, but you do get early access, and usually we also put up all of the regular podcast episodes and stuff go up the night before or the day before. It's basically like as soon as I get it uploaded to Patreon, that's when I make it live for a lot of our patrons. So if you support us over there, those are basically your benefits there. So yeah, thank you again for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.